And let's move on, Mark, into those said Detroit Lions. And the first question I just want to throw at you about the Lions is basically they're the only, and not the only one. We talked about the Bears with this too, but much like the Bears, new head coach coming in for the Lions, Matt Patricia coming on in. What, if you were a Lions fan, put yourself in their shoes, what would you be expecting from this team year one, Matt Patricia at the helm?
This one's a tough one because the Detroit Lions last year, I mean, they make a move to get a defensive coordinator and a guy who's supposed to be a very good defensive coordinator. You look at this team last year and really great passing game, terrible running game. Very strong offense, below average defense. So you look at this team and it's this polar opposite kind of team and you're like, all right, the strength is offense. They went with an offensive guy and it didn't work. You know, that's not really a recipe for success when it comes to Detroit. They really want to get that defense going, and they have to because they're going to play Aaron Rodgers twice a year. You know, they're going to maybe play Mitch Trubisky if he turns out to be good. They're going to play Kirk Cousins. You know, they got to go against these tough defenses. I mean, this is the NFC North. Run games, defense. The Detroit Lions haven't done either one that well last year, so they got to go that way. What you really want to see is Matt Patricia come in here and reestablish this Detroit Lions defense. This defense that is going to, you know, bang you up. It's going to bruise you. They're going to not let you score. You're going to be scared to go against the Detroit Lions because, you know, not because you're going to get Sioux stomped necessarily, but because you know that it's going to be a rough game and you know they're not going to give an inch. That's what you really want. The thing with Matt Patricia is, you know, this was a guy who really prided himself on turnovers, which is exactly what the Lions need. Because, like I said, Aaron Rodgers, Mitch Trubisky, Kirk Cousins, these are guys who are going to throw the ball. You want to get those turnovers. You want to force those quarterbacks off the field because if you give them the opportunity. You know, and we're making a little bit of an assumption here with Mitch Trubisky that he will go in the correct direction. But if you give these guys time, they are going to take advantage of your defense, especially when this defense last year wasn't that great. What I really need to see out of the Detroit Lions is LeGarrette Blount actually being a solid contributor here with Kerryon Johnson as well. How those two mesh together. This running back core that's here, this basically a running back by committee, like that needs to be better. Out
of which ones two are you going to get? You mentioned Blount and Johnson, but Amir Abdullah is still there, Theo Riddick is still there, Zach Zenner, Dwayne Washington. Which one of these six guys is either going to get going? Because the Lions for a run game they've never been a team that this is our runner. I know Amir Abdullah, they've drafted him to be the guy, but it's always been a kind of back by committee where one kind of takes a little bit of the main haul.
Yeah.
But it's never anything special from the running back position.
Exactly. I mean, they need someone to really step up. I mean, I think Amir Abdullah might have been the leading rusher last year with like 500 yards, 550. And that's not good enough for your team. I mean, this was one of the worst running games in the NFL.
552.
That's not good enough. You have to be better than this. And the thing is, when your defense is going to be subpar and when your running game can't keep drives going, you're just asking for those issues to get worse. Unless you're going to dink and dunk your way on the field to give your defense some breathing, some time to breathe on the field, that's going to be bad. What I'm very interested with the Detroit Lions, of course, is going to be, do they try and move away? I mean, because they've been so embedded in Matthew Stafford being the identity of this team.
I was just going to ask that.
Do they move away from that?
Here's the question I was going to ask is, he's 30 years old. They just bring in Matt Patricia, which I'm not, like, the big difference between Patricia and the Lions and Nagy and the Bears are the quarterbacks. Because Mitch Trubisky, young quarterback, entering his second year, Matt Stafford, 30-year-old quarterback.
He's established. He knows what he's doing.
The question I was going to ask you is, are we going to fast forward about 4 or 5 years down the line, and are we going to look at Matt Stafford and go, wow, he's the Phillip Rivers of the NFC? Or he's a really good quarterback. He's got the stats. He's a really solid guy to be your starter. But the team just could never do anything with him.
Like the Chargers, I definitely think we could.
They're not doing anything with Phillip Rivers. They're pretty much wasting his talent out there. Mm-hmm. I think the Lions are kind of like, is this another soft reset of the Lions? And you're basically, by resetting this team, resetting Matthew Stafford, and by doing so, wasting years off of his career because he's only getting older, he ain't getting any younger.
That's the interesting kind of fork in the road that the Lions are at. They are not going full rebuild right now. They are bringing a guy in who hopefully can just tweak a few things and maybe in a year or two get them where they're playing and they're contenders.
But are they doing it at the wrong time?
Well, that's the thing is because we're going to see if it works or not.
Because the other two teams in their division, the Vikings are on a different timeline. The only one that timeline might work up for them is if, hey, let's get this going and let's hope that Aaron Rodgers falls off that cliff because he's getting up to the Tom Brady type cliff.
Yeah, of course. I mean, right now you're looking at this. The Minnesota Vikings are in that kind of 2-3 year prime period where contracts are working out. They've got all these studs. They don't have to pay them yet. The Bears are this. We are about 1 year off from when we can start competing. You're hoping the Packers are that, and we're done. The Detroit Lions need to do that. But here's the thing for the Detroit Lions is, they've got, no one's going to doubt that this passing game is going to be great because Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback. He can always bail you out.
Even with a separated shoulder.
Yeah. He will bail you out of games if your team is close enough, for sure. But the problem is, if this defense continues to be this below average defense, if this run game continues to be one of the worst run games in the NFL, then this is going to be a team that says, yeah, we didn't go full rebuild when we first got Matt Patricia, and maybe that was a mistake. Maybe we should have gone full rebuild. Because then, in 2-3 years, if they get what John Fox happened with the Chicago Bears of John Fox is just going to tweak a few things and then we'll be good to go. Oh, wait, the team was not built for that. They needed a full rebuild. Then they just wasted the end of Matthew Stafford's career in that case. Potentially. I mean, he's only 30. He could play for 6, 7, 8 more years potentially. I mean, Tom Brady is making us all question our ideas of when quarterbacks can end. We all talk about Tom Brady, but Big Ben is old. Drew Brees is old. Aaron Rodgers is getting there as well. Phillip Rivers is old. There's a lot of old quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and there's been no better time to be a quarterback in the NFL than right now because they're so protected.
And to me, the big thing that kind of set this season, I'm going to say almost set this season up for failure in my mind right away from the Lions was their draft, their first-round pick.
Ragnow?
When they took Ragnow, I hated that pick. That was one of the only picks of the first round that I hated because that, to me, was a Lions team. Like, to me, I thought there were so many better needs that could help this Lions team now. To me, that's a pick where it's like, we're going to help this line. We're going to get better for the future. And the thing that I wonder is if this might be the beginning of the kind of Bill Belichickian thought process for Patricia coming in, where it's basically all right, I'm going to try to come in and do this. All right, it's not working this year. Let me stop, pivot, shift this way, and we're maybe next draft, we see them take a quarterback. Now, I'm not saying like first round, but we see Patricia do the Belichickian thing of, hey, let's look at this quarterback because I want to get
my guy.
More of, well, not just my guy, but we might have to stop, pivot, and go more into a rebuild because of where we're at and how old Stafford will be getting.
If they go into a rebuild an actual full rebuild instead of just this tweak some things, Matt Patricia's not going to be there for the end of it. He's going to get fired.
Because by the end of Stafford's contract, he will be 35. So to me, we'll just put it this way: Patricia's got to do something within this contract. I don't think the Lions get anything done this year. I don't think the Lions get anything done as of right now within Matt Stafford's contract, which would put him to 35.
The thing is, the Lions on a neutral playing field right now, neutral playing ground, I do think the Lions can be a playoff team
this year.
Yes, this year I do, because Matthew Stafford can get it done if they get a guy who is known for having good defenses that create turnovers. You're just getting Matthew Stafford more time on the field.
Yeah.
They draft Kerryon Johnson and a center, which I don't completely agree with when they drafted him, but sure, he's fine. But they tried to address the running game. They still have a great quarterback, good wide receivers. This defense should hopefully be better. This team can play, and they can get in there. The problem is, we just talked about it with the Green Bay Packers. We're expecting the Minnesota Vikings to win this division.
Yep.
That means you're competing for the wild card spot. There's only two against the Packers, against the Cowboys, against the maybe two teams that don't get the NFC South, the 49ers, because I'm expecting the Rams to win the West. You're competing with like 4 or 5 other teams for a wild card spot. And your schedule, we've talked about it all podcast, is difficult. It's it's that simple.
Their schedule, to me, I look at it and I go, this is going to be a Lions team that, to me, goes 1-9 in the first 10, then wins 4 out of their last 7 games to get back up to 5-11. Because, like, I look at it and I go, the Jets, and I'll say maybe the Dolphins, are wins in your first 10 weeks. Going to San Fran, I'll take Jimmy Garoppolo. I'll take the better quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo.
You got to pump the brakes on calling Jimmy Garoppolo a better quarterback than Matthew Stafford.
Right now, I think that
Matthew Stafford throws for 4,500 every season.
But that one being on the road, if that one was in Detroit, I would be picking
Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo right now.
The San Francisco 49ers
I hate to say it, Lions fans, but I'm on your side
are going to be a much better team this year than the Lions, and I would say Jimmy Garoppolo right now is a better quarterback than Matthew Stafford, and will win more games than Matthew Stafford this year.
Could he win more games? Sure, but I think you are buying way too much on Jimmy Garoppolo hype to call him a better quarterback than Matthew Stafford.
No way Tom Brady is losing to the Lions in Detroit. I've got the Cowboys also beating the Lions in Dallas. I got Packers beating them twice. Vikings beating them twice. The Bears beating them in Chicago, having the split when the Lions play them back in Detroit. The Seahawks, that'll be an interesting one. Seahawks coming off of a bye. Yeah, it's in Detroit. Yeah, that Seahawks defense is lesser than what it's been. But what do the Seahawks have that the Lions don't? Russell Wilson, who's a solid quarterback, and they also have a better run game than the Lions have. The Dolphins, to me, are the only question mark within those first 9 that right now I have as a loss, because I don't really know how to gauge the Dolphins coming into this one.
They're another one of those teams where last year was a wash.
Then you look at the rest of the season. After that, Bills will be a win, Cardinals will be a win, Bears will be a win, the Panthers will be a win, and then you're losing against playoff teams. Rams coming off of a bye, Vikings, and Packers.
It's an interesting thing with the Detroit Lions, because if things go really bad, sure, they could be a 6-win team. If things go really well, they can be a 10-win team. You know, they're just kind of at the mercy, because they're in this middle ground, you know, where a lot of these games are going to be those toss-up type of games. I fully expect them against the Panthers to be quite a toss-up. I think they can beat the Packers in one of these games, probably a home game, obviously. You know, they can beat the Seahawks, because the Seahawks are falling off the cliff. I'm not buying the 49ers thing as much as you are. It is a road game, so I do lean a little bit towards the 49ers. The Cowboys, we don't know if the Cowboys are going to be that good of a team this year, because we saw them not perform as well last year We got to see how that goes.
I mean,
there's
and
a lot of things up in the air for the Lions.
And I look at their wins last year. The only solid win in my mind, the only solid team that they beat last year were the Vikings in Minnesota. Other than that, Arizona wasn't a very good football team. The Giants weren't a very good football team. Both times they beat the Packers last year did not have Aaron Rodgers, in my mind, didn't count. You beat the Browns, guess what? Everyone beat the Browns last year. You beat the Bears twice, but hey, we talked about that offense not scoring many points, and that first game that they won was only by 3 points, and then they beat the Buccaneers, who were also a team that, to me, is not very good of a football team.
Definitely, but the thing to... And I hate that as a Chicago Bears fan, I have to defend the Lions right now. The thing is, though, I mean, they drafted a running back because they knew they didn't have one. And they went into free agency and they got one as well. Hopefully that's going to make them a better team. That offense will be on the field more often. They got a defensive coordinator as their head coach. He knows how to make these teams turn the ball over. It's a bend, don't break offense. It's what you kind of want going against a lot of high-powered offenses that they're going to face this year. They have the potential to go back and be another 9-7 win team. The problem is, we said it earlier in the podcast, I don't think 9-7 is good enough to get you into the NFC playoffs this year.
Not just that, I don't think 9-7 is as attainable as it was last year, because of what we've said for each of the teams in the NFC this year.
Sure.
The schedule's harder.
I'm just saying that, like I said, they addressed the running back situation, which was their biggest issue last year. They, we assume, addressed the defense as well. This team should be better. It should be a better team. It looks better on paper.
On paper.
They still have Matthew Stafford, who's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. You know, they have a lot of things going well. They were a 9-7 team last year. They barely missed out on the playoffs. This team is, you know, I don't want to, as much as I would love to hate on the Lions as a Chicago Bears fan, I don't want to do that because they don't deserve it.
The Lions and the Bears will have so many similarities this year when it comes to games they win and lose. And the similarities will be, they will only win one game against the NFC West, and that'll be the Cardinals. They will go 2-2 against the AFC East, only beating the Jets and the Bills. They will only win one divisional game, and it will be against each other. And then that 5th game will be somebody outside that they beat. The Panther, to me, it could be the Panthers. Could be maybe a team like the Seahawks, but it's going to be like, hey, they got this one other game. They're not going to be, in my mind, a much better team or a similar team that they were last year, because last year you beat most of your opponents that you beat were not very good last year, and this year we're making your schedule harder,
for sure,
which is not good for a team replacing their head coach. Bringing in a guy who, one of the questions that we've always asked when we brought Matt Patricia's name up in hirings is, how's he going to do? He's never been a head coach before.
Well, it's not only that, too, but the Patriots teams were not really known for having great defenses. You know, I mean, they would have above-average defenses, but they were not ever great, amazing ones. The interesting thing for me when I look at the Detroit Lions is, first of all, I got to put this out there for, you know.
And how many guys from the Belichickian tree, like under Belichick, actually leave to become head coaches and actually do very well doing
There's only
somewhere.
A few of them.
I mean, Bill O'Brien's not doing that hot right now.
I mean, this year might be good. If injury didn't happen to Deshaun Watson, that would have been a good season.
Josh McDaniels got kicked out of Denver, and now he's back in New England doing the whole OC thing.
He had his opportunity to be a head coach and turned it down.
In Indy, and then didn't want
He
it.
accepted it and then turned it down. But first of all, for, of course, Sean Anderson, he's going to love this one. He's going to put a bookmark on this and say, if the Detroit Lions are good, I'm going to post this on our Flashback Friday of all Ricky's comments. But no, really, I think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because the Detroit Lions do not do well. If they are a 4-5 win team, be very interesting to see the reaction to Matt Patricia, especially if the defense is bad.
Yeah.
Then do they just sit there and admit that, yeah, we do need to full rebuild? And maybe do they chut him? I don't think so. But after a second year, if it doesn't start going well again, they're going to have to embrace the fact that then it's not, the team is full rebuild, and I don't think Matt Patricia survives that. I don't think that that's necessarily where they're going to be, though.
Any final thoughts on this team before we wrap things up?
The only thing I think of is that those last two games, Vikings, Packers, those are going to be so incredibly important for the Lions. I mean, that's very realistically, one, plain spoiler for these teams, especially if the Vikings and Packers are neck and neck for the division, but also potentially for their hopes of getting into the wild card.
I just think with this team, you didn't change enough for me to think of you as that much better of a team, and your schedule got harder. So to me, I'm going to have you guys with less wins than you had last year. I see this team as a 5-11 team this year, tied with the Bears at the bottom of the NFC North. This is where you guys come in, though. Let us know what you think about the Lions down below. How wrong am I for bashing on the Lions in this segment? How right is Mark for defending the Lions? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section.